Welcome, everybody. Hi, Karen.
Hi there. So good to see you, Michael.
So good to see you.
And it's good to see everybody who joined us for the virtual chapter meeting. I'm so excited. It seems like it's been a while since we've gotten together. I mean, I know it's been a month, but it just seems like it's been a long month.
There's been a lot going on.
There has been a lot going on. And more to go on as August. August is a busy month for hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
The fall is a busy time.
It is. And we are headed off to Las Vegas next week. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Next week for Hypno Thoughts Live. Show of hands, how many people are going to be in Vegas on the call? Next year, though. Think about it for next year. Yeah, Michael and I will be there, but think about it for next year. Hypno Thoughts Live in Vegas is definitely a great conference.
Oh, I see Mark there. Hi, Mark Sewell. Are you going to be in Las Vegas?
I had planned to originally, and now I cannot. So something came up. But I'm retiring from my day job in 170 days, and I can do this full time then. So
all right.
There'll be no stopping me.
And just hours from now, you'll be able to say 169 days. And won't that be lovely?
I do. I actually have a countdown calendar that has days, hours, minutes, and seconds. Not that I'm keeping track, but
that's great. That's great.
Shelley Stockwell just joined us. She'll be at Hypno Thoughts Live as well. You're not in Vegas yet, are you, Shelley?
Oh, there she is.
You're muted. There you go. Now you're unmuted.
I'm home in California and I have a slot machine.
Well, okay. It's just like Vegas then.
Close enough.
But I'll bet your place isn't as smoky as the Orleans.
Oh, I don't know. It's smoky around here. California's on fire.
All the fires, that's true.
But we're doing better, so it's all good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And Michael, what else? You've got some interesting stuff coming up. I know that you've got rules you want to establish. I know you have a whole format here where you talk about what our rules are and everybody gets muted and you can get CEUs and you can get CEUs with IACT and IHF. Oh, maybe I'm stepping on your toes. Perhaps I should step back.
Are those rules? My gosh.
And let you tell us all of the info.
They are conveniences. So yeah, typically during the interview, we keep everybody's microphones muted. You can always unmute your microphone if you have something to say and or need to talk to us. And that's just because if all of these microphones are open when we're recording, we get some rather interesting things. Sometimes people forget that their microphones are on, and then they have some comment to make about the wonderful, exciting presentations that we're making. So we don't want to record that stuff. So so keep your microphone muted, and if you have something that you want to say, and there'll be time later on for questions and stuff, you can always unmute your microphone. And if you don't know how to do that, down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, most likely, depending on what kind of device you're on, you'll see a little microphone. And it probably has a red circle and a line through it if you are muted. And if you click on that, it'll unmute you, and you can turn it on and off easily. So
you can also use the chat function down on the bottom. You can type in a question as you have it or something like that, and we'll try to keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, in fact, if you just click where it says chat at the bottom, it'll open up a chat window for you, and that'll be available throughout the whole call. Anytime we want to write anything, or anytime we want to maybe put out a web address or something to you as well. So it comes in handy.
So we just talked about Hypno Thoughts, and Michael, you'll be teaching 2 workshops and a seminar there, yes?
I will be teaching 2 workshops and a seminar there. One of them is one of my workshops. No, I'm not doing a seminar. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I'm just doing 2.
You're not doing a pre or a post?
No, I'm not doing a pre or a post. I'm doing like a 2-hour and a 1-hour, and one of them is on emotional choice, and the other is magic hands, something that we'll probably talk about a little bit tonight, and just one of my favorite pieces to share. And so that's what I'm doing. And you are doing something. What are you doing?
I am doing a 1-hour on metaphors, eliciting metaphors, and a 2-hour on hypnotic time travel, a fancy way of talking about age regression and age progression.
Hypnotic time traveling is just as groovy as sliced bread.
Yes, it is. And we're going to be talking about little different ways of doing the informed child technique, where you can do it above and below and beside somebody and holographically, and different ways of thinking about doing that informed child technique.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah.
That will be lovely. So I'm going to see you out there in a week.
Yes. And, and it's always a good party time. And right after you get back from HypnoThoughts Live, you're going to start teaching almost immediately a past life regression class, are you not?
Actually, before we go.
Oh, it starts before we go. Well, don't put too much on your plate at once. I mean, really.
Yeah, no, not really. I wouldn't want to do that because overeating is not good for one. But no, so August 21st is when that begins. It's the 21st, the 28th, and the 4th of September. It's like so many of the classes that I do, like the virtual hypnotist and those other ones, in the sense that it's a 3-session program. Each evening is an hour and a half, and it's $65 for the whole shot, and it's limited to a dozen people, so that so that we can interact a little more easily in it. And I just really love doing these things, and this is going to be a very special one. So I'm looking forward to that.
Little inside tip for anybody who's interested: do it this weekend because the thing is filling up, and you don't want to miss your chance on this.
Yeah, there really are only a couple of places left, and you can just go to my website, which is www.phoenix-services.org, and on the front page of the website, there's a link that will actually take you to the page where you can register for the class. There's a kind of a headline article about it, and it says, click here for more details and registration. So you can find it there on my website. And yeah, if you're interested, please join us. It'll be lovely to have you. And it's going to be it's just going to be a great group. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm involved in kind of a fun thing with Jason Onett and Scott Sandlin and some other people, Kelly T. Woods and Richard Nongard. We're doing a thing called hypnosis. Many of you know that my big effort is to get people away from using scripts so they can do it on the fly, ad lib it, or do scripts. But this is a different approach to it, where we're going to give people, I know that sometimes brand new hypnotists have trouble divorcing themselves from the script. So we're offering this web-based program where you can mix and match and put together scripts and have a collection of really interesting things. So it's about 9 days away from launch. And if you sign up, you'll get 7 free scripts right away. And then it's going to progress from there. It's going to be a very cool thing. If you're interested in that, just go to scriptgnosis.com. Scriptgnosis.com.
Yeah.
Shelley just posted that that's a script tease.
Script tease.
I just did a script tease for the Christians.
Yeah. So, and I've already gotten my free 7 scripts, and they are lovely. But I'm looking forward to that when it finally comes to fruition. So. Yeah. Cool.
And Michael, you'll be doing some excellent stuff in October in Chicago at the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference.
Yes, there is the Mid-America Conference in Chicago, which is a lovely place, isn't it? And a lovely thing to do. So, why don't you just say something about the Mid-America Conference in general?
Well, I am on the board of directors for Mid-America, so thank you for letting me talk about that. It's a wonderful conference. It's October 19th, 20th, and 21st, and we get world-class instructors. Shelley always joins us. That's actually where I first met Shelley Stockwell-Necklace and fell in love. And so, it's a wonderful collection of people. It's a small conference. It's about 250 people. It's intimate. We really get together and really get to know each other. And I think as much as I love many conferences, as much as I think HypnoThoughts is the fun conference and IACT is the really bonding conference, I think Mid-America is the friendliest conference I've ever been to. And it really is a lot of people hanging out and having a good time. So that's October 19th, 20th. And Michael will be teaching a post-conference on evolutionary hypnosis.
Exactly. So yeah, so in fact, what that will do is it'll go certainly well beyond what we talk about tonight, and we're going to introduce the topic generally, and that will involve doing exercises and integrating some of the skills from it. And it's a 2-day post-conference workshop that I always look forward to that. The other thing that I love about Chicago, by the way, is it's home for me. So it's an opportunity for me to finally get around my my mother and my sisters and all that sort of stuff, and don't tell anybody, but it's a write-off.
That's right. A trip home, that's a write-off. That's right.
So what a lovely thing. So certainly one I won't miss. And you just mentioned, Karen, the wonderful Shelley Stockwell that we all have fallen in love with, who is on the line there, because Shelley runs the International Hypnosis Federation. And one of the things that I didn't say, we were kind of going chronologically, but we missed something, and that is today is Tuesday night. We're talking about evolutionary hypnosis here, and on Thursday, the IHF has a online chapter that's more of a class, the way that they do it, and it's a little shorter. I think they're about 40 minutes or so from start to finish. Shelley, actually, would you like to take the microphone and tell people about that?
Sure. I'm so happy I get to speak. God knows I love attention. Thank you for listening. The International Hypnosis Federation, because of Michael, started its own Zoom channel, which is called Free Hypnosis-IHF. Kathy Kennedy started it. So thank you, Michael, for teaching her how to do that. We're having a blast. And it's called Free Hypnosis-IHF. And it's the third Thursday of every month. And you just join the Facebook page, which is Free Hypnosis-IHF. And we have tips of the week. And then the third Thursday, we have a wonderful speaker. And ladies and gentlemen, our wonderful speaker this coming Thursday, which is, let me see, I'm looking at my calendar, the 16th, is Michael Watson. Yes. And he is terrific, as we all know. We all love him. And he's going to be our guest speaker. And he's going to teach us amazing things about you and your brain. So I can't wait till Thursday. Put that on your calendar. And do join our Facebook page, Free Hypnosis-IHF. It's going to be terrific to have you on the show. And thank you for teaching us how to do Zoom.
Oh, you're welcome. I just love this. And by the way, so what a week for me. I've got 2 of these things to do, and I'm usually on the other side of the microphone, so it's quite a switch. And I so love to share what it is that I do and what it is that I'm learning. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk here tonight. What else haven't we told them about, Karen? Tomorrow, this recording is being made will be posted tomorrow. It will be on the IACT IMDHA members forum. For those of you who are members, you can access it there. But it's also posted in the virtual chapter Facebook group. So just go to virtual chapter on Facebook, and you can access the group there. If you're not already a member, please join. And the group that Shelley was talking about, by the way, that is a group on Facebook that you can become a member of. That'll keep you posted about their things. And it's called, Shelley, say it again?
Free Hypnosis-IHF. And it is free.
Yeah.
And we are commercial free as well. We just want you to learn, share, and become even more magnificent than you already are. It's the idea is we're changing the world with hypnosis and these great speakers like Michael Watson.
And with the wonderful people that Shelley Stockwell hangs around, not only is it free, but it's probably free range as well.
Definitely.
and we
Michael
really
was actually Shelley's keynote speaker at her last conference. Your conference is always in March, is that right, Shelley?
Yes, it's this year. It's the last weekend in March, and it's 3 days, and it's at a retreat center, and it's a wonderful experience. It's different than a lot of the other conferences because it's very intimate. We stay there on the premises, and everybody shares ideas, and we eat together, and we're all in one room, and it's just a great sharing. Anyone who comes to our conference is invited to give a 5-minute talk. So that means that the attendees have a voice as well as the presenters. So it's a great opportunity. I'm trying to get Karen Hand to come out and play with us.
It's on my calendar in March.
Yes, the last weekend in March.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
Awesome.
I've got my fingers crossed.
Good.
So I don't have to sit on the floor, do I?
Absolutely not.
Okay, as long as I don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor, then I'm in.
But you may meet a few peacocks on the road.
Oh, peacocks are my favorite.
All right.
One of my birds. So thank you. All right. All right. So we've socialized, we've kibitzed, we've made announcements, and I think it's high time that we actually get to our speaker, which is why you guys showed up tonight, after all, right? So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Michael to just sit in the passenger seat for a moment, take a sip of his tea, and let me tell you a little bit about him. We all know how magnificent he is. We all know how jovial he is. We all know his bad jokes and things like that. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, his funny, witticisms and things like that. What you may not know is Michael is an international trainer and consultant. He's been practicing hypnotherapy for 37 years. You can believe it. He started when he was 6. He was a child hypnotist, and he's just been amazing ever since. He's a former president of the Hypnosis Education Association and a certified trainer of hypnosis and NLP. He's known for his lighthearted and caring style. His trainings are as enjoyable as they are practical, and that is a fact. Michael's developmental work in generative hypnosis is cutting edge and offers a new skill set to hypnotists in contemporary practice. As Shelley mentioned, he taught her how to use Zoom and do these kind of meetings. He taught me how to train virtually and really made a difference. And he's teaching that to all hypnotists all over the world now. He's training staff on the training staff of NLP Comprehensive, Salad Limited, and several other organizations, and was honored as the IACT Educator of the Year for 2009. He was Educator of the Year for Mid-America Hypnosis Conference last year. And tonight we have him all to ourselves to educate us. So, Michael, welcome to the virtual chapter meeting.
We might add the virtual chapter of the year meeting.
Yes, Michael won for this magnificent virtual chapter, and aren't we delighted that he set this up for us? You know, Michael, I mentioned generative hypnosis and how you're known for that, but really, you're also well known for this concept of evolutionary hypnosis. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that. Explain to us what that is.
Okay, and it's probably a good idea to start out with just mentioning generative hypnosis, and that sort of explains, it offers an explanation about why it is that I'm calling this evolutionary hypnosis that I'm doing now. Generative hypnosis, in principle, that is in terms of what it is hypnosis that generates change. And generative change, for those of you who maybe aren't entirely clear about the concept, is simply the notion that, how do I say it? That it's generated from within the person, in the sense that you may have a client who comes to stop biting their fingernails, and you do some hypnosis with them and they stop biting their fingernails. That's remedial hypnosis. It's hypnosis to remedy a particular issue. Generative hypnosis goes beyond that. That is, generative approaches would not only stop the guy from biting his fingernails, but he'd probably stop biting his fingernails because there was something larger happening in terms of his unfoldment. He was seeing and understanding himself in a new way, and that new way of being precluded biting his fingernails, but it also included even more. So there's more expansion. This generative notion is about taking what you've got and making more of it, and making more of it. So in any case, generative hypnosis as a name, as kind of like a brand, is really associated with Stephen Gilligan, who's my primary hypnosis teacher. And because there are other things that are really important to me that go into the mix of what I'm talking about, I choose this larger umbrella of evolutionary hypnosis, which includes those generative pieces, but a few other things as well. So I think I've answered your question.
Well, yes, but it's interesting to me that you characterized generative hypnosis as expansive, and evolutionary hypnosis goes beyond that. So you've gone beyond the limits of limited.
Well, and whether it goes beyond, another way to say it might be that it attends to things from a slightly different perspective. I mean, one of the things that I'm really clear about in terms of what drives us is this evolutionary force that moves the whole world along. That's kind of what's happening. So Karen, you've been around hypnosis for quite a while, and I've been around hypnosis for quite a while. And before I was around hypnosis, I think the first thing that I ever saw, maybe if I were like a small child, I might have thought that hypnosis required a vampire, because I think they tend to be the first hypnotists that I was aware of. I always thought look into my eyes was some kind of an induction that would happen. And like as a little kid, and then I remember seeing a great movie, one of the best movies. Anybody interested in hypnosis, you need to look at this. It was I Was a Teenage Werewolf. It was the original version with oh gosh, what's his name? I love the fellow.
Michael Landon?
Michael Landon, yeah.
Little Joe.
Right. Yes, but this was, so yeah, and even before he was Little Joe. So Michael Landon, before his hair got big, that was the Touched by an Angel Michael Landon. And so he was this teenager, and he was a teenage werewolf, and somehow or another they got a hold of him. I can't remember how this happened, but he's in a laboratory with this psychiatrist who looks like Lloyd Nolan, but is not. So the cheap version of Lloyd Nolan. And rather than doing an induction, he gives Michael Landon an injection. So we've got narco-hypnosis, which is the first time I ever heard about anything like that. And almost immediately, Michael's eyes begin to spin with spirals inside of them. And clearly he's hallucinating something. And Michael, or Lloyd Nolan, grabs him by the shoulders and says to him, "Where are you and what are you doing?" And I thought, oh my God, this is so fascinating. This is the kind of hypnosis I would like to practice if I were like 11 or 12. So when we started out, we saw these weird images of hypnosis, and through the years, this field called hypnosis really has come to look very different than the way that it looked to us when we started looking. And those of us who've been around, the longest, have seen, more and more of the changes. In some jurisdictions, in order to be a hypnotherapist, you have to get a license, a business license that categorizes you as a fortune teller or psychics or those sorts of things. Still to this very day. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is hypnosis is evolving. The world is evolving, and hypnosis is evolving, and our clients, in a general sense, are evolving. That is, and by that I mean our client base is evolving, and our clients as individuals are evolving, which is in fact the very reason that they're in our offices to see us. So evolutionary hypnosis makes the most sense in the world to me as a way to talk about it. When you think about the evolution of hypnosis, I mean, do you have any images in your mind? I know Shelley has a great story, and I'd love to let her tell it, but it takes a little while. But the short version, is simply, she went to a place, she gave some guy money, he sits her in a chair. I believe he put a blindfold on her, and then counted back from 1,000, relaxing one toe at a time. Something like that. It wasn't 1,000; it was 100. And then at the end of all of that, gave her one suggestion for what she had asked for, and brought her back up out of hypnosis. It's the way people did things, once. And we're really lucky to be living in the age that is post Erickson and post Dave Ellman, and hopefully, if we really admire these great people that put together the hypnosis that we looked at today. I mean, folks, a lot of folks in the hypnosis community are really strongly associated with one or the other of these camps, the Ellman world or the Erickson world. And it's I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Right in the middle of that.
You know what? Your eyes are spinning like this.
Yeah, you see the little.
He just went into his own trance.
Yeah. So. Oh, go ahead.
let me just say, one of the most fascinating things I've heard you say, and you say a lot of fascinating things, but one of the things that really struck me was I heard you say one day, you know, Ellman and Erickson wouldn't still be doing it the same way if they were alive today.
Exactly right. And
that's evolved too.
And that was the thought that had fallen out of my head. It's that literally both Dave Ellman and Milton Erickson have been dead for 50 years. You know, and this is a modern world. It is not the world that we were in 50 years ago. 50 years ago, culturally, people responded differently to authority figures, to doctors. Women responded differently to men before they were so joyfully and blissfully liberated later on. And so there's this traditional picture of a man with a commanding voice and, you know, and doing weird eyes things and just saying to people, you know, sleep, you know, you are in my power, and you know, and folks would drop into hypnosis. It doesn't work that way anymore. And how lovely for us that it doesn't work that way anymore. I was in Brazil in the beginning of the year, and I was really absolutely amazed by this. Was because they are so open to the experience of trance. Literally, all I'd have to do is sit in a chair across from somebody with the intent, you know, it's like, okay, we're going to do some hypnosis now. And I could just say to them, take a nice deep breath and close your eyes, and they would practically fall through the floor. Because in their culture, that's what you do. You know, you respond, and they have models for it. But it continues to change. That's the point. In this ever-changing world in which we live in, I've got Paul McCartney in my head now. Hypnosis itself is changing, and we've got to keep up with those changes. If you were to like open an office today and you know, and do what people were doing 30 years ago, it would be really difficult for you to be able to maintain a practice. So, and yet, has hypnosis, the principles behind hypnosis haven't changed, have they? But the audience certainly has. So,
yes.
So yeah, this is an important thing. You know, nowadays I might say to somebody here in the States, you know, take a nice deep breath and close your eyes, and they'll say to me, well, do I have to close my eyes? What if I don't close my eyes? Will it work if I keep my eyes open? You know, we're
no. And then once they're into it, they're saying, and if I itch and I scratch it, will they pull me out? Oh my gosh, you know, there's so much thinking going on.
Yeah, well, there you go. Thinking is not all that it's cracked up to be, but I can make a very strong case for that. So anyway, the thing that I want to say about this is, first of all, I've got a model that I'm wanting to share with you about the way that I think about hypnosis. I want to be really clear with you that I'm not saying what I'm saying with an attempt to be right or to tell you how it is. What I really want to share with you is a model that is my model. It's a description of my of the way the world looks from where I sit and from the experiences that I have. And whatever of them are useful to you, that's great. Go ahead and use that stuff. And whatever isn't, well, maybe that's just not the right model for you. And that's perfectly fine with me. And it isn't altogether original, because it really is about how I put together things that I've learned from Stephen Gilligan and from other sources and places in order to develop a system and a way of working. So there's some principles behind it, and it's more about the principles than the techniques. But in the workshops, what we like to do is we like to give people an opportunity to really, you know, experientially learn how to take these principles and to put them into practice. So the place that I'd like to start, Karen, is just to share with you an overview, and this really is from Stephen himself. It's directly taken from Stephen, about the history of hypnosis and how it is in this evolutionary process we are where we are, and what it means to be here. And the idea, it's just very simple, is that in sort of the first generation of the first wave of hypnosis, we've got people like Franz Mesmer, you know, that wild and crazy guy with a big purple cape. It's interesting. I read descriptions of Mesmer, and I find people like mixing him and Milton Erickson up in interesting ways, or the other way around. I heard somebody describe Milton Erickson as a man that wore a big purple cape and Erickson never wore a cape, I don't believe. You know, but so we start out though with this strong character, this Mesmer guy, right? Who, if you look closely at what he was doing, if you really look at what he was doing, in most cases, it doesn't look like anything that we would call hypnosis today. It looks much more like something that might be considered Reiki.
Right.
You know, his inductions were the result of these mesmeric passes through the auric field, the energy field of the body. You know, and it was what he believed to be the result of animal magnetism, of some particular quality or characteristic that he himself possessed. So the commission looks at it, and finally, with the assistance of Ben Franklin, who was an American ambassador to France at the time, decided that there really was nothing to what Mesmer was talking about, that all of the phenomena that he had been demonstrating could be explained by the power of suggestion. And I think that's really kind of cool, because I'm glad that they finally got there. And I think that's certainly a little modernization of that old model. So anyway, there's this guy Mesmer, and from Mesmer through James Braid and all of these people in the history of hypnosis, all the way up to Dave Ellman. One of the important principles in hypnosis was that in order to be able to interact with somebody at that deep level of consciousness that's going to make the changes that you need to make, you've got to depotentiate their conscious mind, which is a fancy way of saying you've got to get their critical faculty out of the way, which is another way of saying you've got to knock them out. And so what we've got is this whole history of hypnosis that says the first thing we've got to do is get rid of your conscious mind, because that conscious mind of yours is trouble. So, okay, so the model of hypnosis is your conscious mind is trouble. And your unconscious mind, by the way, in that original model, would be something like your unconscious mind is an idiot. You know, your conscious mind is trouble. We're going to get it out of the way. And once we do, then we'll be able to talk directly to your unconscious mind and tell it what to do and how to act and how to behave, because it can't think for itself. It is an idiot. Somebody told me once that the unconscious mind was like an obedient 3-year-old. And I said, you don't really know any 3-year-olds, do you?
I was going to say, as if that existed.
I just didn't even understand the statement. But so this idea that the unconscious mind is kind of tabula rasa, man, ready, just open and available for a hypnotist to jam some ideas into somebody's head, while their conscious mind was checked out because, you know, we had knocked them out first. This is the first generation of hypnosis. And it goes all the way up to the days of Ellman and Erickson. And what happened then in the second generation is very simply, and some of you know the story, there's a poignant story that I'll just tell you the short version of. But Milton Erickson, paralyzed and 17 years old, sitting in a rocking chair, wishing that he could run and play and climb that tree out in the yard like he used to when he was, before he had polio. Discovered while he was entertaining that thought that the chair that he was sitting in began to rock. And it startled him. And by the way, he wasn't preparing for a future in hypnosis. He didn't think in those terms. He wanted to be a really good farmer, actually. He was going to be an agriculture major when he went to school. His chair started to rock, and he thought for a moment, maybe I'm getting my ability to move back. Maybe I'm not going to be paralyzed after all. I'm coming around. And so he tried to rock the chair, tried to move his arms, and discovered that he could not. By the way, that sounds like a hypnotic suggestion, doesn't it?
I was just going to say, you really have to say that 3 times. He tried, he could not. He tried, and he could not.
And you cannot. Try, and you cannot. And so he became despondent. He turned his attention back inside, and he just thought to himself, "Woe is me! What a shame! How nice it would be if only I could run, play, and climb that tree and the chair started to rock again." And on that day, I like to say Milton Erickson discovered hypnosis. And I think discovered is the right word. I mean, I don't mean like he's the first person to find it and stick a flag in it or anything. But I mean, it wasn't so much that somebody introduced it to him. It was that the unconscious mind introduced itself to him. That it was an inner experience that he had where he became aware of the fact that there was something within him, that there was an intelligence operating within him that was outside of his conscious awareness. And that began, what we've got now. So another way to say it is, in this second generation of hypnosis, what happens is the unconscious mind is not an idiot after all. The redemption of the unconscious mind, the unconscious mind is in fact a repository of information and understanding and wisdom, and in a collection. It's the freaking Smithsonian, and more. So the unconscious mind gets elevated then in this second generation to be something of real value, something to really appreciate for its own sake. However, Erickson said, all the way up until a minute before he died, you can trust the unconscious mind, but the conscious mind sometimes gets in the way. So Erickson, just like everybody before him, said, so what we got to do is we got to knock people out. We've got to somehow or another take them into a trance to depotentiate their conscious processes in order to be able to communicate with them hypnotically, which is the limitation of Erickson. But on the other hand, Erickson was halfway there, opened the doors to an understanding of the unconscious in a new light, as something wonderful. And I think what NLP really does is begins to become the next generation. NLP says, guess what? You don't even have to be in hypnosis for your unconscious mind to be listening to exactly what I'm saying to you. They were so worried about getting the unconscious or the conscious mind out of the way. And because, by the way, the concern for getting the conscious mind out of the way seems to have been predicated in this idea that if you say something that the conscious mind would object to, then the suggestions won't, take root. Well, it's kind of interesting. So in other words, we've got this technology that we're building around the notion of sneaking up on your client and somehow or another getting some thoughts to operate within them that they really wouldn't want if you ask them. There's something a little bit strange about that. And I think that if you give clients suggestions that they won't object to, you don't really have to worry about that kind of thing. And the way to give clients suggestions that they won't really object to is to establish rapport with the unconscious mind. To get sensitive to the unconscious mind, not to be so sensitive to your script that, that you barely know that there's a client in front of you. But to be all about being in that shared space of trance with your client, where you have an unconscious mind and they have an unconscious mind, and a great dance is available by the connecting of those minds. The old way sounds to me a little bit like arm wrestling. Somehow or another, I'm going to meet my client and I've got to get them to go under. I wonder if I can get this client to go under. So I can sneak up on them with some good ideas that I know would be good for them. Obviously, my client knows more about what's going to be good for him than I do. Whether he knows that consciously or not is yet another question. But I know that his unconscious mind or her unconscious mind, whoever my client is, that their unconscious mind knows more about the situation to be resolved and all of the nuances and subtleties of it that 40 years of therapy isn't even going to get understood by some therapists. I will never know the experience of my clients. And so who am I to say, well, now I've got these things I've written down I'm going to say to you, and I know they're going to change your life. So there's wisdom in your client, and that's a really important principle in evolutionary hypnosis. That, as a matter of fact, I mentioned that I'm talking to this IHF group a couple nights from now about the emerging self. And just briefly to say what that's about is this is the emerging self in action. Our job is to bring our clients out. They showed up in our office because some part of them experienced a level of discomfort. Wanted to be different in some way.
And may I just interrupt for 1 second, Michael, to point out it was the conscious mind that got him to call you and work on that, wasn't it?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
And we want to suddenly lock the conscious mind out of all of this process?
Yeah, well, what we've been saying to our clients for years, Karen, is if you'll just leave your conscious mind out here in the waiting room, and
right.
You can come in and we'll talk for a while, and the two of you can get back together later. That's incredibly disrespectful. So the idea, if as I understand it, hypnosis is a relationship, and it's predicated on being able to make these rapport-filled connections, then you'd better respect your client. I was telling one of our students in the class was rather surprised because she had been doing some work, and she commented, I think you might have seen the thread on Facebook, but I had told them, I said, I think it's probably a good idea to fall in love with your clients. I mean, I said it tongue in cheek, I don't mean anything inappropriate, but to really, you got to pardon my language because I don't know any other way to say that, but to just really give a shit about what's happening with your client, as opposed to next, number 37 is coming in, and to enter into that special dance with them. So we're here to sort of bring them out. The unconscious mind, we know, is not an idiot. And by the way, the unconscious mind isn't unconscious. I think that's it's such a curious thing to call it. And because the unconscious mind is conscious of everything. The thing is that the conscious mind isn't always conscious of the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. You see, so we call it the unconscious mind, not because it's unaware, but because we are. That's sort of a weird thing. Maybe we should switch the names around. It's curious to me. So anyway, the thing is that here's the way I like to think about the unconscious mind. I think it's beautiful and what it does in hypnosis. And it came from a book. Some of you may know this book. This is a classic. If you don't have, you've got to find this. It's probably entirely out of print. So you might have to go to like Abe Books or some places that have really hard to find titles. But it's called Instant ESP by, I believe the guy's name is David St. Clair. I hope I'm right about that. I'm sure about the title. And it's probably 40 years old. I mean, I don't know how long ago. It's at least 30 years old. And he has this lovely description that I just thought was great. It's kind of like if you're in a library, and I don't know how this is my modification of his description. I don't really remember it specifically. But if you're outside, if you're in a library, in a public library, and you've got to be over 30 in order to understand what I'm about to talk about. But there was a time when libraries didn't just have computers everywhere. You would like go to a card catalog and stuff, or you would go to the reference desk if you were doing some particular study. And you ring the bell, and the reference librarian comes to the window. And you'd say to the reference librarian, I'm doing a report on the Hoover Dam, and I need all the dam information that you have. So she says, okay, I'll get that for you. And she turns around and she disappears into the stacks to get that information. And you ring the bell again. So she comes back to the window. By the way, I already apologized for the sexist nature about how librarians in the 60s had to be a woman, but I didn't mean that. It's the world I lived in. So she comes back to the window and says, what do you want? And you said, well, I want that information on the Hoover Dam. And she says, well, I'm going to get it. Just chill. And she disappears back into the stacks, and you ring the bell again. And she comes to the window and says, what? You say, Hoover Dam. She's like, right, wait. And she goes back again. Now, the funny thing is that if you've ever had the experience of, this happens to me all the time. I like theater, I like movies, I like the stuff, and I'll be watching something on television and I see an actor that I recognize from somewhere, but it's kind of obscure. And this voice starts in my head that says, who is that actor? I know who that actor is. And the harder I try, it just doesn't seem to be there. It's like I keep asking the question again. It's like I keep ringing the bell again. So rather than being able to disappear into the stacks to get me the information about the Hoover Dam or about Hollywood actors, the librarian keeps getting called back to the window. And to some degree, it's just a question of not having enough trust in your unconscious mind. That when you give it a task, when you initiate a transderivational search, there's a case, it's a story that I don't remember all of the details about, but some young kid that was brought to a lecture that Erickson was giving. His therapist had been writing Erickson, and they'd hoped that that they'd have a chance to work together. And the best that Erickson could do was, he said, well, I'm doing this lecture and some demonstrations and stuff at such and such a place, and if you bring him along, I can see him there. And Erickson didn't bring this kid up to the stage until the very last minute. So the kid's sitting there on the stage, and Erickson just looked at him meaningfully, and he said, now, I wonder just how you are going to solve your problems. What an incredible thing, because he created for this youngster what I would call a critical moment. The guy was waiting to hear the voice of God, or the wise guru at the back of the cage, or whatever your cave, rather, or whatever cage. No, that's a different thing. Whatever your reference is for the pinnacle. He knew that this was somebody that was really, really powerful, and the guy was going to say something to him, and it was going to make all the difference. And Erickson sent him on a transderivational search. That is, he asked the reference librarian in that boy's head, go back into the stacks and figure out how he can solve this problem. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, I think, as I recall, I can't remember what the problem was, to be honest with you. I think that it was maybe a disciplinary issue, that this was possibly a delinquent or something like that. All that I know is that the reports are that the kid turned around his life and made a whole lot of changes. And there's a whole lot of stories like that in the Erickson book. There is something I would point out about those stories in the Erickson book, just to be sure, because if you are like me, wanting to be as great as Milton Erickson, well then at least do a fair job of making a comparison, because what we get in the literature are the best stories of Erickson doing the greatest things in 2 moments, on just a Wednesday afternoon. And so it looks to most readers of Erickson that he just he had just something about him that was absolutely magical and mystical, and nobody could figure it out. It didn't always work out that way for Erickson, but here's a point of Erickson's paradigm that I think makes a difference and would be useful for us all to consider. Somebody asked him once, a reporter, the very question that I'm hinting at, and that is, Dr. Erickson, we've heard all these stories about your wonderful successes with clients. But he said, is there anyone that you've ever failed with? And Erickson very, very congruently looked at him and said, well, no. Then he paused for a moment, and he said, but there are a number of people that I'm not finished with just yet. And I think there's an interesting way to think about what we're doing, and it's either we've accomplished the job, or, we're still a work in process. And I think that's really appropriate. Now, in the consumer market, I understand there are people that come to you and they want to spend 40 minutes with you and never smoke a cigarette again and stuff like that. However you sort that out in your practice, I hope you have a way to either make them stop smoking forever in 40 minutes, or to be able to make the appropriate evaluation and let them know what you think it's going to take and let them decide how to go about it. So, or to refer them to somebody else, whatever it is that works for you. So
I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to just say this very quickly, that you promised us demos.
Yes.
And time is getting away from us. So I just want to make sure that we have some time for
one
of those demos, if not both of them.
Well, time is moving fast, isn't it? So well, so one of the important principles in this simply is that your client has the capability already, not only to make the changes that they want to, but has the capability of going into a trance. This is very difficult, by the way, for some hypnotists to comprehend, because it sort of humbles us when we realize how unimportant we are in the equation. Clara, is that a question?
I'm sorry, Shelley was just saying that she had to take off, and she was kissing everybody goodbye, and so I was giving her a kiss goodbye.
Oh, I couldn't see her. I didn't have the local screen on. Okay, so that's all right. Help me. That was a very good pattern interrupt. So the clients are capable, that they have a natural capability. If we're going to talk about evolution, what we're talking about is that very same force that got some fish to jump up onto the land one day and go, well, gosh, now that I'm up here, I guess I'm going to have to get me some lungs. And in a certain way, when our clients are showing symptoms and stuff, it's that some part of them is trying to find a way out into the world. And our job is to facilitate that process so that it can find its way out into the world appropriately, because what looks like a symptom may just be a bad job of coming out. Might need a little bit of support. So the capability of clients is the important thing, that it's in them, that they know how to do it. And so what I'd love to do as a demonstration, and I'm wondering how I might do that. I see, who can I see? Let me switch over to gallery mode for a minute. So I see we have Susie and Catherine. Now I can see everybody. So if somebody is just jumping to be a demonstration for a quick induction, it's not anything revealing or anything that you need to deal with, just an opportunity to go into a trance. So you can discover, or we can discover, what it is that you're already capable of. You can give me a little wave. There you go. This is going to be Catherine. So Catherine, and let me get you on my screen here. And for the rest of you, however you operate the software is, of course, up to you. You can look at everybody on the screen. I'm not much to look at during this, because I'm just going to be talking, and all of the action really is over there on Catherine's side of the loop. So if you want to watch the demonstration in a way that might be useful, you may want to just highlight Catherine, that is, click on her picture, and then you'll be able to see her more easily. She's waving because she's muted. So I have unmuted you, Catherine. Oh, you muted yourself again. No, yeah, there you go. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
There you go. There you go.
Guinea pig.
How are you?
I am well, thank you. And you?
Well, I am well, thank you. And have not seen you for a while. So it's lovely to see you.
Thank you. It's good
and
to
I'm
be
glad
here.
you're here. And this is a demonstration that you may actually have seen before, because I think that I've done it in the virtual hypnotist class in various places. and all I want you to do, and what I want the audience to understand, is that people have a natural capacity to go into an altered state of consciousness. It doesn't really require much from me. And Catherine, I'm so lucky, because I've got somebody who obviously has a natural capability. What I probably could just do is say, Catherine, go ahead and go into a trance, and she'd find a way to do it. But I'm going to put a little more effort into it than that. So I just want you to notice just one of the components of trance. Trance is about focusing your attention. It's about, concentration and focus and stuff. And there are a number of things you can focus on. And something that might be interesting to focus on is just the level of relaxation in your body right at the moment. People think you have to focus on a spot on the wall or something like that, but you can focus on a feeling. So you can focus on that sense of relaxation that you just already have naturally as you're sitting there, Catherine. And I'd like you to just take a moment to check it out and to let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 where 10 is just so relaxed that you are, out for the count. And 1, where you're really tense and uptight and all of that, at the exact opposite end of the spectrum. And kind of let me know where you are. At a 5. Okay. All right, so right now, as you just sort of attend to your experience, what I want you to notice is that what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is something that you've described as a 5. And given that that's true, and that you have a subjective sense of it, I wonder if you'd be interested in discovering how you could turn that 5 into a 6 or a 7 or maybe even an 8. Would you have an interest in that? Great. Okay. So go ahead and do that then. That is, go ahead and take a moment to discover how it is that you change a 5 into a 6 or a 7 or an 8. And you can explore in your own way. Everybody has their own way to go into a trance. It might have something to do with the breathing. It might have something to do with the way that you hold your muscles. It may even have something to do with the stillness that you can find and enjoy between one thought. That's right, and the next one. And when that 5 has become a 6 or a 7, or maybe even an 8, I suspect that you can take it all the way there. And just go ahead and give us a nod or a thumbs up or a way of letting us know. That's right. Now, it was interesting to see how easily that hand came up and how lazily it moved. Because that suggests to me that you could even go to a 9 or a 10 if you wanted to. And sometimes it's nice just to dip your toe in for a moment and check it out. But also to know that you can just enjoy the relaxation, benefit from the relaxation, and maintain just the right amount of that level of comfort and easiness as you allow the rest of your attention to just return to full room awareness in your own way. Of course, if there are a hypnotist here, you might count from 1 to 3. But the interesting thing is that you know how to do that. That's right. Now, if you were getting impatient, Dr. Erickson might say, opening, opening, opening. But she really did push from me. So thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that. Do you have any comment, Nick, or anything you want to share?
At the beginning, I found it a bit hard because I'm visual. So you were telling me to do feelings, and I don't do feelings. I'm visual. So I just kind of told myself to go to a beach, and after that I was fine, and then I could let your suggestions wash over me in the manner that I think you wanted them to be. I could grab hold of them, but I had to go to the beach first and then notice how relaxed and how nice it was to increase my level within my beach, if that makes sense. Nice.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, in fact, and that's exactly the point here, is that so she says she's visual, and oh my gosh, see, here's the really neat thing for hypnotists. We get so worried about, oh my God, what if I don't do it right? What if I don't say the words right? I should have known she wasn't visual. I should have, or she was visual rather, whatever it was. The interesting thing is that the intention was there, and I know that she had the intention of going into this altered state. So we got permission. We had the rapport that we needed with her unconscious mind. We didn't have to knock her out. What we had to do was to tell her to go there. To tell her, go, yeah, so you want to go into trance, Catherine? All right, knock yourself out.
The interesting thing to me is Catherine perceived it as you were giving her kinesthetic cues, and she perceives herself as being visual, and yet it still worked. Yeah. There was that critical factor that we were talking about. And Catherine characterized it earlier. Catherine, I think this really speaks to what you said in your chat question earlier about, are we not always wrestling, as she put it, with the conscious mind or the critical analytical factor? And Michael, I don't think you felt that was a wrestling match at all, did you?
Oh, no, gosh. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, because in fact, thank you, Catherine Hepburn, for teaching us hypnosis. Less is more. At least that's my sense of it. And sometimes we have to do this big haranguing thing, and now I'm going to stand, look into my eye, and sooner or later I'm going to shout at you or hit you in the forehead.
He's doing the wrestling.
Or what now?
I was doing the wrestling in that scenario.
That's right.
Well, after all, it was your metaphor, right?
Well, see, and this is exactly the point. Who is the hypnotist here?
Me.
Yeah, exactly right. And I created a space in which that could happen. I mean, I don't want to make the hypnotist's job entirely irrelevant, but because quite frankly, there's all kinds of ways that people could not go into that experience. There's got to be an invitation, I think. Or just a conscious decision on their part, those who use hypnosis, self-hypnosis, So when I do self-hypnosis, one of the things that I would point out that uses the same principle, or the other side of it, that is that people really have the resources, and that their unconscious mind is wise and can be sent on a search and to find answers. So what I do is when we were taught self-hypnosis, some people at least, their first lessons of self-hypnosis went kind of like this. Take a few breaths, go inside, do whatever you do for induction, count down, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the technique is. I don't mean to be saying that like so disparagingly, but, but whatever it is. And then when you finally get down there, you're deep in trance, right? Now you're supposed to start giving yourself suggestions. The funny thing is, this is a model that comes from the people who also are of the same school of thought that says you've got to get the conscious mind out of the way. So somehow or another, when they're ready to do their hypno magic and give themselves suggestions, they can't do it without consciously asking themselves a question about it and consciously generating those suggestions. Right? So it's counterindicated by their own definition of what needs to happen in hypnosis. The thing that I like is I just like to not interfere. Now, my deal with the conscious mind is I love my conscious mind. My conscious mind, by the way, is the client when I am a client. My conscious mind is the one that's going to reap the benefits of any work that is done. My conscious mind is the one that called and made an appointment. My conscious mind is the one that lives in the world. So So I certainly don't want him to be left out. On the other hand, my conscious mind decided what it wanted to work on. So when I do self-hypnosis, what I do instead is I give myself a suggestion in advance. Before you go into a trance, okay, I give myself a 3-part suggestion. I tell myself that I'm going into hypnosis for X amount of time, 20 minutes or whatever it is that I've decided, because I have this brilliant clock inside of my head, and we all do. You know, if you don't, you certainly can develop it just by, you know, doing it enough and setting an alarm until it works out, you know, that your brain got the calibration. But I'll say, you know, 20 minutes for the purpose of allowing my unconscious mind to do what's necessary and appropriate to assist me with my goal, whatever that is. So my statement is, I'm going into self-hypnosis for 20 minutes for the purpose of allowing my unconscious mind to assist me in accomplishing my goal. And the third part of my suggestion is, and when I've finished this process and come back out of trance, I would like to emerge feeling how, and set an exit state. Because most of you know, if you go to a hypnotist, one of the things that the hypnotist will say to you is, and in a moment you can come all the way back to the room feeling wide awake, alert, and refreshed, right? Somebody's telling you how to come out of a trance. And typically that's, you know, that may be fine if you're going to get in your car and drive home from the hypnotist office. But if you do self-hypnosis and you do it like a half an hour before bed, God forbid that the only exit strategy that you have is to wide awake, alert, and refreshed. I remember a million years ago, 1 million exactly years ago, when I first started doing transcendental meditation, when I invented transcendental meditation, I remember learning very quickly that if I were to do something like that shortly before bedtime, I was going to get a buzz about a half an hour after I was done. And, you know, it was going to get in the way of my sleeping. So in this case, I tell myself, here's how long I'm going into self-hypnosis. The purpose is for my unconscious mind to deal with this particular issue. And when I'm finished, that I would like to emerge from trance feeling perhaps mellow and relaxed if it's going to be bedtime. Nice exit state. By the way, the exit state could be your whole goal. It could be, let's say that you're going to go to some office party and you really don't want to go, but it's kind of obligatory. So you can go into self-hypnosis and say, when I come out of self-hypnosis, I'd like to emerge feeling sociable and gregarious. Just use it to change your state. Don't have to have a problem, you know, to just decide what kind of state you want to end up in. So in any case, I trust my unconscious mind. That is, I have said to my unconscious mind, I'm not going to give you any particular suggestions about how to solve this problem, because I suspect that you know more than I do consciously about what would be the best way to go about it. So I'm going to open the door. I'm going to say, I would like you to concentrate on this and be my unconscious mind, man. You know, by the way, Stephen Gilligan said this to me. It startled me. I almost fell over when he said to me, you know, Michael, your unconscious mind doesn't speak English.
That's right.
It blew my unconscious mind. Because when you hear words in your head, those words may have been informed by your unconscious mind, but when you're hearing words in your head, that's not unconscious, right? You're fully conscious and aware, you know, of what you're hearing. So I'm just telling my unconscious mind, man, go do some stuff. I'll do the dishes, you know, I'll watch television, I will sleep, I will eat, I will hang out in my life, and you in the background can be taking care of this business. And I think when I first did it, I was a little skeptical about that, except, you know,
We do it all the time.
Changes start happening. You start noticing things that you didn't notice before. You start responding differently than you responded before, depending on what the particular outcome is. So it's nice to know that that's going on, and it's going on seamlessly. And curiously, it's going on all the time. one of the things that we are doing, let me look at the clock here, by the way. One of the things that we're doing is, and this is another principle, I call it the principle of creative experience, is we are creating our reality. And there's sort of a new way of talking, new age wave, help me.
New age way?
New age way. Yeah, gosh, why was that so difficult? Ever since my stroke, man, that's the one that I struggled. Yeah, so there was this new age notion that, people say you create your reality, and the next thing that I knew, it was just as good as Christianity at helping people find things to feel guilty about. Why did I create this? Why did I create that? That's very interesting. But that's not why we're doing this stuff. So I don't understand why we want to torture ourselves with it. What I do know is that there's these two things. There is reality, whatever the heck that is. And by the way, if any of you are absolutely sure that we're not in a pod somehow in the Matrix, who knows? What I know is that there's that, whatever it is. It's the thing that mystics study reality. Isn't it interesting to consider? And then there is our subjective experience, which is unique and different for each and every one of us. In our subjective experience, rather, the rules about what's right and wrong and good and bad, are unique and individual. The way that we see things and understand things, the things that we notice, billions of bits of information are coming at you every second. And somehow or another, your conscious mind receiving them on the peripheral devices, the eyes and ears and nose, mouth, if you're tasting things, touching things, feeling things, come into you through the senses, and somewhere or another, you make a decision, not even consciously, but you make a decision. First of all, you sort through all of the information and decide what's important. So that out of a billion things happening around you in a moment, you're paying attention to 7 plus or minus 2, I have been told. And out of those 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information that you're attending to, you're creating meaning and defining the world for yourself. And you will live in that world that you have defined. Now, this is one of those places where, and gosh, I'm sorry, Dad, I just, bashed Christianity. And now, on the other hand, I'm about to quote Jesus, who said something very interesting. And that is this piece of scripture that's always only half shared. Jesus says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." That's half of the quote. Jesus said that if you judge, that you will be judged by the same standards that you apply. Which is, by the way that in Aramaic, if you really translate it from the original Aramaic, what Jesus was saying was, whenever you point at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
There's a rather clever fellow, this Jesus. And it is because we are creating a system of values in our mind. We are looking at the world through it. We are judging everything because we actually think that our judgment is accurate or is correct, or as the way that, I know the way that things should be. I know when Karen and I run the world, it will be a much better place.
That's right.
That's true, by the way. Trust me. Trust us.
Trust me. Yes, that will be definitely true. But there is one thing that I would like to point out about that Catherine showed us, and this is for the benefit of the people who are on their phones and didn't get to watch this demonstration. One of the things that Catherine showed us and did for us was that she showed us that we can't know how our client is going to respond. And you'll notice that Michael didn't give Catherine direct suggestions on relax now, go deeper now, take it to the next level now. He was offering her options of doing that. And one of the things he wanted was some feedback as to let me know when you're ready to progress. Catherine, I'll tell you, for me, I would have given a slight nod of the head, or I might have said yes, I might have said something. And you didn't. You lifted your hand up. I watched that and I went, well, that was so wonderful to see.
Well, no, she did it wrong.
What do you mean she did it wrong? No, it was wonderful for me to see, because I would never have imagined to say, give me a thumbs up, right? But she did. And that was the only thing that was important, is how she imagined it and how she signaled it. And that was natural for her. And so there was nothing for you to resist against. Now, you might have been wrestling in your head, wait, if I put my thumb up, and should I nod my head? Should I say something? I don't know. But we don't need to know. She gave you the signal, and she did it, and you allowed her to do that. And that was beautiful to watch.
Great, thanks. And with regard to the issues in our life, by the way, who is the one that knows the most? Again, I always think there's 4 people in the room. You know, I 2 conscious minds and 2 unconscious minds, and between the 4 of them, it is the unconscious mind of the client that's got the information. And the question is, how do you draw that out? How do you bring that into the world? So the time certainly is going by, and there's something I actually think that I could share this. There's so many things that I'd love to share with you, and this business that's important to me about the way that we make the world up. Yeah, I think this is probably the best thing to do for now, about the way that we make the world up. First of all, some of us. I mentioned earlier, and you might think that it's your unconscious mind, but some of us have voices in our head. You know, voices that tell you what a fine job you're doing, you know, that continually pat you on the back.
Where do I buy some of those voices?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't that nice? You can hire them. In fact, oh, by the way, I know where you can buy them. James Hazelrig has an app. Are you aware?
Right. That's right.
He has an app for your iPhone or Android, and
only Android at this point.
It says something lovely to you, and it's as good as Chatty Cathy without the string.
Right.
And has a whole bunch of lovely things. So you get voices in your head, and they give you hell, and they make you feel bad, and wonderful. You know, I don't think that bad feelings are very useful at all. I'm not saying that there aren't, by the way, given and you got to forgive me, I'm going to be just barely political here. There are a whole lot of things going on that outrage me, you know, and I turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. It doesn't matter which one. If you turn on one of those questions, there's been some little piece of news. And I don't mean that it's an unimportant one, because there's just one after another after another. I mean, there's a whole lot of things going on in the world. But there's a piece of news that has some significance. They report on it. And then they spend the whole rest of the day with one piece of news, tearing it apart like a dog with a bone, and getting as many people to weigh in about how outraged we should be by this. And it's like, I don't think outraged helps. I mean, I think if it generates in us a call to action to do something worthwhile in the world, that's a great thing. But there is not any reason why we need to be feeling badly while we're making progress. And somehow or another, we really live in this culture that values and hangs on to bad feelings long beyond when they're necessary, and then installs a little speaker in your head to continue to tell you how bad you are, how you really screwed this up, whoops, you know, et cetera, right? That we got that. So I just want to tell you what to do with that voice in your head if you've got one. You have to, now I discovered this, by the way. I studied with great scholars all over the world, right? Some renowned individuals of impeccable reputation. But I got to confess that this one I seem to have learned from a kidnapper. Because one of the cool things about kidnappers, I love opening a sentence with that clause. That's just one of the cool things about kidnappers, is that they go to the kidnapper store and they buy those little boxes that you can put on the telephone, so that when you talk in it to ask for ransom, it doesn't sound like your voice. You know what I'm talking about? Right? It changes your voice. So so it sounds like a different voice. the voice in your head, whatever it is that it says to you when it's giving you a bad time, some of the information, by the way, might be worthwhile. I mean, I had this experience when I used to run these well, I still do, a monthly program. And when I first started doing this in San Francisco, I could barely get an audience. Wasn't doing any advertising except in this little community newspaper, 35 words for free, and I'd have refreshments ready, and I'd be ready to do a talk and all this stuff. And then an hour before, I'd be looking out around the room. And a part of me would say, Michael, are you really ready to do this program? And I'm thinking, kind of doing a double take, just double checking myself. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think I'm ready. But and then the voice is saying, well, you could be even readier. You could have read that other book or listened to those tapes. Some of you know what I'm talking about when I refer to tapes. The things we used to have. And on and on and on. And then finally, and look at those refreshments, by the way. Those refreshments really aren't very good. And for God's sake, this is such a lame thing. And nobody's coming anyway. You didn't get any RSVPs, did you? And on until then, hopefully a few people started to arrive, and the evening went on. And I felt terrible. Then I saw this, I saw two things. I mean, I had this idea about kidnappers. I always thought that voice box was an interesting thing. And I had seen a seminar that Richard Bandler did on the art of flirtation, because NLP, you can model anything. And he got this woman, Ann Teachworth, who was a psychotherapist from Atlanta by day, but by night, she was absolutely lethal. And she was the model for the seminar. So she showed up wearing this cat print spandex outfit, that showed every curve that she could possibly show, and she taught us crazy things, like how to play the look away game, like when you want to flirt with somebody, you catch their eye for a minute, but you look away and then you look back from time to time. All of these silly things that she did as a part of this modeling class. And she was lethal. And what made her the most lethal was that she had this Southern Peachtree Atlanta voice that she used for full effect. With Honey Childs and all that sort of stuff in it, when that was helpful as well. So I remember thinking when I was getting ready for one of my programs, wouldn't it be better when that voice goes off in my head rather than it having such a terrible tone, by the way? Your critical voice, by the way, doesn't talk to you very nicely, does it? It's not like sweet and pleasant. It's the kind of voice you wouldn't use with other people. And it is, in fact, the tone of voice that really is what gets you, much more than anything that you're saying. So I thought, okay, how about this? The next time that voice starts up, I'm going to flip that switch, and I'm going to get Ann Teachworth's voice in my head instead. So the next month, it was time for me to do my program. About an hour before, I felt this little shiver of anxiety at the usual time that it would have come. And then I heard a voice in my head that said, "Now, Michael, are you ready for this program?" And I thought, well, yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right. And then the voice continued, by the way. It said, you could have read those books or listened to that tape, that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, well, I'll bear that in mind for next time. It had no power to it at all. And the funny thing is, as ridiculous as this may sound and as simple as this may sound, any one of you can do that any moment. Right now, you could decide that the voice inside of you, it'd be better to have Huckleberry Hound in there, or, Yogi Bear, or I'm going to do Hanna-Barbera's now. I mean, there's a whole great cast of characters, right? Or maybe you could just change it to the voice of somebody who loves you, who actually is interested in being kind to you. That'd be all right, too. but pretty cool to know that you can change the contents of your head. And when you change the contents of your head, you change your subjective experience of the entire world. That's pretty cool. I think. You like that, Karen?
And the coolest part is we get to choose. That's what they never taught us in grade school or growing up, that we get to choose those thoughts that we're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to change them if we don't like them. That's the cool thing.
And those thoughts that we're thinking determine how we feel in any given moment in time. One of the things that I really did learn from Jamie, and he's absolutely right about this, is your thoughts. If you're feeling bad, if you are feeling badly, check your thoughts. Rory heard me. I went off on a soapbox about this last night. But if you're feeling bad, check your thoughts. What are you thinking? What do you have to think in order to maintain those bad feelings? And then just knock that shit off. You know, I mean, it isn't a useful thing to do. But if you can't, so lesson number one, if you can't, just stop it, as Bob Newhart would advise.
I was going to say, bring in Bob Newhart to help you.
Yeah. I have played that video for clients several times. So if you can't just stop it, then how about this? For the first month or so of this new practice of having a better inside of your head, if you can't just stop it, then how about just take a moment to know that it could be stopped. Just to get conscious of the fact that you are doing it is the beginning of change. If you think that voice inside of your head or those unwanted emotions are things that are happening to you, you don't understand what probably should be a principle of evolutionary hypnosis. And that is simply stated, experience is a verb. It isn't what happens to us, it is something that we do. Things are what they are, and I'm not saying the world is lovely, and I'm not even saying that you will make it lovely by feeling differently about it. But I know that you will feel differently about it if you feel differently about it, and that's the name of the game. When we think about people like Viktor Frankl, for example, who got himself through concentration camp, because he had this idea. He had this thought in his mind that someday the experiences that he was having here would lead him to talk to people about these things and to bring some wisdom and insight to the world. He saw himself actively engaged in the future. And so there was no reason for despair because he knew he was going to get out of there. And his whole worldview was that. In fact, this is a great place for me to, I know we need to wrap, and I think this is the perfect wrap. The thing that I think really helps the most is having a useful paradigm for you about working with clients. What do you think you're up to when you do it? Get yourself a metaphor. Get yourself your own metaphor. But how do you think about this? And it can absolutely empower you. Werner Erhard, the Est guru, used to tell us that we should live as though our life depends on it. Well, what a curious thing, because it turns out it does. But that very thought gives you a whole lot of energy if that's the paradigm that you're going to carry around. But my favorite, nonetheless, and the one that I always share and would like you to consider is comes from Mother Teresa. The one that you might want, by the way, not necessarily from Mother Teresa. I'm not advocating Mother Teresa-ness or any particular religion or anything, but I just want you to notice how this works. She's a Benedictine nun, and was a Benedictine nun, and in the order of Saint Benedict and the rule of Saint Benedict, one of the things in the rule, one of the points of the rule, is that you should live that you should behave or receive rather all men, and I hate that it's that, but again, written in another age. So everybody, but that you should receive people who come to you as Christ. Now, again, if this is your religion, that's a big deal. So just to understand, whatever it is that's sacred to you, for Mother Teresa, Bride of Christ, this is an opportunity. The world is an opportunity, or interactions with people are an opportunity to engage in some mystical union with her Lord, her main man. That's pretty groovy. Rather self-indulgent, I think, but nonetheless. And so she would go down to the side of the river where people were, dying and pathetic and miserable and leprous and everything, and tend to them every day until somewhere along the line a reporter, because God bless reporters for the crazy things that they asked her, how do you do this? How do you do this on a daily basis that it doesn't get to you? And her response was, I see in these people our Lord Christ in some of his more distressing disguises. Now just consider the power of that. Again, given who she is, to carry that template through the world and to look at what you look at through that lens has got to make your world a little different than other people's worlds. We do not live on the same planet as anybody else. And that's lovely, particularly when we understand that there are things that we can do about determining the quality of the planet that we live on. So, Karen, you have been so nice to me.
I have been enchanted by you, entranced by you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
As always. It is unfortunately time for us to wrap things up. I'd like to answer one question if we can. Susie Gale asked if we know the app, and I don't know James's app's name. I've been looking for it and can't find the name of the app.
I think that was on my phone, and I've got it right here.
Okay.
Let me, oops. It is called Emergency Validation. I guess that there's a paid version and a free version, because it says Emergency Validation free. So if you do a search at your app store for that, and just so you can, I don't know if you can see, there's this lovely smiley face. Oh, that's weird. It's doing weird things with my, of course, it's reflecting the light. But just to give you an example.
You make a difference in the world.
All right. See?
You're worth it.
Hey.
You make a difference in the world.
Twice. Must be the message.
Have I mentioned how amazing you are?
There you go. So, lovely thing to have. I've actually had it fire off without me being prepared for it in my pocket from time to time. And,
here's the downside. It has not been available for iPhones. It's only an Android app, and I just checked, and it's still not available for iPhones.
Oh. Pity.
So, yeah, I know. So you have something we don't have. Enjoy it. That's one.
That's one. All right. So, listen, you guys, it's been great. There you go. Rory has it. Android, right, Rory? Yeah. See. All right, everybody. Thank you.
All right. There must be some good people who have Androids too.
There will be a recording. There will be a recording out tomorrow, August 21st. If anybody's interested in that PLR class, www.phoenix-services.org.
If you want your CEUs, go to the IACT IMDHA page and tell them that you spent some time with us, and they will give you the CEUs, and Shelley will too at the IHF page.
Yes, exactly. All right. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Michael. You were great as always. Everything we expected. Love you. See you soon.
Bye-bye.